Hey everybody, welcome back to the Bible Reading Plan. You did it. If you've read John chapter 21, you have finished the entire four-booked gospel. That is amazing. I'm so proud of all of y'all who've made it this far with me in reading the gospels. We have, as Robertson Chapel, as a church, have read through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And tomorrow we'll be picking up in Acts. And then after Acts, we're going to get into some of the epistles. It's going to be a great time. But as we finish out the book of John, John is writing kind of this epilogue, this, hey, here's what happens after, and I want to convince you, I want to show you why this matters and why this is true, why this is integral to our faith. He's trying to convince you that Jesus is God still. And I read this, and I just have the question that I want to ask you today. What do you do when you sin? And maybe it's, you yell at your husband or wife. Maybe you get angry, you cut someone off, and someone cuts you off in traffic. Maybe it's, you watching pornography, you giving into lust. Maybe it's you stealing, you cheating. Maybe it's you going back to alcohol or some addiction. Maybe it's you gossiping, doing all these things. What do you do when you sin? What is your response? Because every time, we're tempted to feel shame. And I want to show you the grace of Jesus in this passage. So we know last time we saw Peter on a solo mission, he denied Jesus 3 times. Before the rooster crowed, he said, I don't know that man, I don't know that man. And then the third time it says he brought down curses, he cussed, and he said, I do not know that bleeping man, is basically what he was saying. And this time, when we see Peter in chapter 21, he has gone back to what he knew. He has sinned. He's forsaken God, and in his shame, he has gone back to what he knew. He knew nothing but fishing. Jesus said, follow me, you'll be fishers of men. And Peter denied him. He felt the shame. He felt that shame of throwing off the name of Jesus, of denying him, and he goes back to what he knows. He says, I'm not going to catch fishers of men. I'm not going to be a fisher of men anymore. I'm going to be a fisherman like I used to be. I'm going to go back to what I was in my BC, in my before Christ days. And that's the temptation for a lot of us. If we sin, and maybe we said, I'm not going to do that again. That's not going to be me anymore. I'm going to turn away from this. If we go back to that, we're tempted to stray from Jesus. He has nothing to want. He doesn't want anything to do with me. He's disappointed in me. He doesn't love me anymore. I'm not worthy of going before God and talking to him. I feel ashamed. I don't even want to show myself to God. I don't even want to confess this and bring it up to the light because I'll be exposed for my sin. I would rather hide it. I would rather put it away. I'd rather go back to who I was and in the darkness, so no one has to look upon my sin. I don't have to look upon my sin, I can go back to fishing or whatever I did before I was a Christian. And that's what Peter did. And Jesus comes after him in this. And it's awesome because it says Peter jumps out of the boat and goes to Jesus when he sees him. And Jesus says 2 words that are reminiscent of the first time he ever met Peter. And it's still the same. Despite Peter's sin, despite who he was, it's not about who Peter was. That's what Peter has to understand. It's not about who you are. It's about who Jesus is and what Jesus just did for you. And Jesus looks at him and he says, follow me. It's the same calling. Before Peter denied Jesus, after Peter denied Jesus, it's the same exact calling. Follow me. And I want to tell you now, before you sin and after you sin, you have the same calling on your life. It's Jesus coming to you and saying, follow me. Yes, you sin. Yes, you turn to that. Yes, you feel shame, but don't let that take you away from Jesus. Let that conviction bring you towards Jesus. Say, Jesus, I need to bring this into the light. I need your forgiveness now. I need to bring this in the light so I can be purified, so I can be sanctified, so I can continue the mission that you have set me forth on, you have put me on. I don't want to go back to who I was. That should be our reaction. We should, in times of sin, when we have sinned, we should want to run to the Father, fall into his arms and say, God, forgive me. I'm sorry for my sin, but I don't want to go back to who I was. I love who I am in you. I know that you continue to love me despite my sin. I know you've purified me of my sin. I want to keep going on the path that you have called me. And it's kind of sad. Peter sits down with Jesus in this passage, and Jesus looks at him and he says, Peter, do you love me? And Peter says, yes, Lord, I love you. He says, then feed my sheep. He said, Peter, do you love me? And Peter's like, yes, Lord, I love you. Why are you asking me this again? And he says, then feed my flock. And then Jesus says, Peter, you love me. And Peter's getting upset at this because, he is so heartbroken that the fact that Jesus has to ask him 3 times. He wants Jesus to know absolutely that he loves him. He wants that to be super clear, but he has denied Jesus 3 times. And he is just heartbroken that Jesus has to ask him this 3 times. Well, what Jesus is doing is he's purifying his sin right here. He's giving him a chance to confess his name, to say, I love you, Lord. I know you. I love you. I follow you. And he says the 3rd time, Peter, do you love me? And he says, yes, Lord, I love you. And he's just upset that he has to ask this 3rd time. And he says, then feed my lambs. And Jesus, right then and there, he says to Peter, he says, I see you, I still love you despite your sin. It's because who I am that I get to forgive you. You get to come into my fold. You get to be my sheep. And now I'm going to send you to feed my sheep as a shepherd among them. Jesus picks Peter up out of his sin, out of his shame, and he gives him, he reestablishes his official calling, his original calling to feed my sheep. It's beautiful. I want to leave this with you today. Despite your sin, despite what you've done, it's not meant to be kept in the light. Jesus is saying 2 words to you: follow me. And you might say, but Jesus, you know the sin I've made, you know the lustfulness inside of me, you know the gossip that I have spread, you know this hatred I've had for people, you know the unforgiveness that has been in my heart forever. He's saying, no, follow me. You may have sinned, you may have done those bad things, you may have run from me or been tempted to run from me, but I'm telling you, follow me. And he says, I still love you, I still see you, and I still have a plan for you. And he's saying that to you today. He's saying, despite that, follow me. Go out today knowing, if you have to stop right here, whatever you're doing, however you're listening to this, if you have to stop this right now and say, Jesus, I've been running from you. And it's because I was ashamed. I didn't think you would see me in a light. I think you would be disappointed in me. I didn't think you would love me anymore. But Jesus says, I love you despite your sin, because while you were enemies of God, I went to the cross for you. And now it's not about what you did, it's about what I did. And you can have that. I've given that to you. I've given you my righteousness. So why are you running from me? Go to Jesus. Stop right now and say, Jesus, I don't want to run from you anymore. I don't want to go to my own ways anymore. I want to run back to you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for this trip to the Gospels you've taken with me. I can't wait to start Acts with you tomorrow. Have a good